On the 11th of February 2010, the body of a woman was found near the parking lot of Greensburg Middle School, and it appeared that whoever had killed her had tortured her and wrapped her up in Christmas decorations and stuffed her body into a garbage can. This case begins on the 10th of February 2010 in Greensburg, Pennsylvania. Jennifer Daugherty was a 30-year-old woman from Mount Pleasant in Pennsylvania. Jennifer had a mental disability which affected her cognitive abilities, and she had the mental capacity of a 14-year-old. This caused Jennifer to be a little naive, and she was often too trusting of people. But she always seemed to make friends easily, and Jennifer loved to dance and she loved to sing. And despite her mental condition, she travelled to Greensburg by herself for various appointments that she had. Her parents were pushing her to get a place of her own and to become more independent, something they later stated they regretted doing. But Jennifer was rather excited at the opportunity to become more self-reliant. She was planning to move into her very own apartment. She created a post on her MySpace page saying, "This is my time to make a new start for myself and to make some new friends and not to be afraid of anything." This would be the last time she would ever post again. Jennifer had made several friends in Greensburg at a community centre, but she had become rather close friends with a 17-year-old girl named Angela. They would both chat on the phone for hours at a time. Angela had a disability too. When she was 15, she suffered a severe head injury, which impaired her cognitive abilities. Angela phoned Jennifer up one night and invited her over to a sleepover at an apartment owned by a woman named Peggy Miller. Jennifer considered this woman to be a friend too, so she jumped at the chance, and it was rather convenient for her too, as she had an appointment there the next day. So, she planned to sleep over at Peggy's apartment, have a good time with her friends, then go to her appointment and return home by the next day. Before leaving, Jennifer wrote a note to her mother, saying, "Mum, I hope you have a good day at work, and I love you very much." Her stepfather gave her a lift to the bus station. Jennifer said her goodbyes and gave him a kiss on the cheek. She then got out of the car and boarded the bus to Greensburg. This was the last time that anyone in her family saw her alive again. Jennifer was in high spirits, as things were looking good for her. She was going to move out and get her own apartment, and she had made some new friends. But things would soon take a sinister turn. She got to the apartment where her friend lived, and inside were 6 people: Angela, Peggy, Amber, Ricky, Melvin, and Robert. Jennifer was familiar with this group of people and considered them friends, and she trusted them. Upon arrival, the group began to mock her and tease her. Then it escalated, and over the next 30 hours, things would get progressively worse. The 6 of them went through her purse and stole money and gift cards, and her mobile phone. They forced Jennifer to strip naked. Then, the people she once considered friends shaved her head and painted her face with nail polish, and one of them cooked up some porridge and poured it all over her head. They got various jars of spices from the kitchen and began to empty them into her eyes. Jennifer had no idea why they were doing this to her, and she constantly begged them to stop and asked what she had done to deserve this. The 6 of them then tied her up with Christmas lights, and they forced her to pose as a Christmas tree. Neighbours would later say that they heard screaming coming from the apartment, but none of them did anything about it. Amber later said that their goal was to embarrass her and humiliate her and to make her feel belittled. The 6 of them would hold meetings and discuss what they should do with her next, and whilst they spoke, they locked Jennifer away in a dark wardrobe. Not yet satisfied with the torment so far, Angela and Amber took turns violently hitting Jennifer with a metal towel rack and some crutches. They then forced her to consume detergent, cooking oil, nail polish, and mixed spices. At one point, Melvin took Jennifer and hid her away in the bedroom, as Ricky's former housemate had come round to visit. Amber said that when she went to go and check on Jennifer, she opened the door to see her on the floor with Melvin on top of her. He had her gagged with a sock and he was pinning her down. Melvin had taken things even further and began to rape Jennifer. Soon enough, they grew bored of the 30-hour-long torture session they had subjected Jennifer to, so they had another meeting in the morning to discuss what actions they should take next. Jennifer had tried to escape and very nearly did before she was stopped. The group decided that this was worthy of more punishment, so they forced her to drink a mixture of urine, feces, bleach, cigarette ash, and sleeping pills. The 6 of them decided that they had gone too far and that they had done too much, knowing full well there would be serious legal consequences for their actions. So, they decided that their next course of action should be to end her life. They forced Jennifer to write a suicide note. Ricky told the group that the letter was to be written and stuffed into her back pocket, so when they find the body, they will think that it was a suicide. Melvin and Ricky then carried Jennifer into the bathroom. Ricky left briefly to go to the kitchen, and he came back with a steak knife in his hand, which he passed over to Melvin. Melvin hesitated for a moment, but then he asked Jennifer if she was ready to die. He then raised the knife and plunged the knife into Jennifer's lungs, chest, and throat. Melvin then passed the knife back to Ricky, who continued the violent attack. Jennifer was stabbed a total of 20 times. Then, they both got up and left her for dead in the bathroom. Later on, the group went to go and check on her and expected to find her dead, until Melvin exclaimed, "This bitch ain't dead." Even after all of her injuries and the torment and torture she had endured, Jennifer was still fighting to stay alive. Melvin and Ricky then entered the bathroom again and closed the door. This time, they sliced her wrists and they strangled her with a Christmas light she was tied up with. They then put Jennifer's body in a trash can and dumped her body in the parking lot of Greensburg Middle School underneath a truck. It was then, on the morning of the 11th of February, the truck driver found her body and contacted the police immediately. A fact that I found truly horrifying is that Jennifer's own mother had to identify her body, and she had to see what these monsters had done to her in those 36 hours. It must be hard enough to bury your child, but to see your daughter's body after she had been killed and tortured is truly heartbreaking. The Greensburg 6 were caught and questioned. Jennifer had of course said where she was going that night, and on the letter she wrote her mother before leaving, she had written their contact information down. Amber, Robert and Peggy all pleaded guilty to the murder and confessed. They all gave a detailed explanation as to what occurred that night, and what they did to the poor innocent woman. And they also gave a motive too. They claimed that the group had planned to kill Jennifer a few days before. The motive behind the murder was claimed to be a love triangle. Angela had overheard her boyfriend Ricky speaking to Jennifer on the phone, and in the exchange she heard him say that he loved her and that he wanted to marry her. This was later backed up by Ricky when he told the jurors about the love triangle between himself, Jennifer, and Angela. Robert and Peggy didn't take part in the actual acts of torture or the murder, but they did, however, participate in the meetings where they discussed what they should do with her, and in these meetings, they had agreed that she should be killed. Robert and Peggy also had an opportunity to put an end to the sick torture, as they were alone with Jennifer while the others left for a couple of hours. Jennifer begged and pleaded with them to let her go, but instead of helping her, they told the other 4 when they returned that she had begged for help, and because of this, they tortured her more. The prosecution team made it clear that they wanted the death penalty for Amber, Ricky and Melvin, but they allowed Amber to testify against the others in an exchange for a more lenient sentence. Amber was also pregnant with Melvin at the time of her arrest. She gave birth in jail, and the child was given to a foster family. Angela was found guilty of first-degree murder and was given a life sentence without the possibility of parole, and she only managed to escape the death penalty because she was only 17 years old at the time of her arrest. Ricky was sentenced to death. Amber was sentenced to 40 to 80 years in prison after pleading guilty to third-degree murder, and like I said before, she escaped the death penalty in exchange for a testimony against the others. Peggy was sentenced to 35 to 74 years in prison. Robert pleaded guilty to third-degree murder, and he was sentenced to 30 to 70 years in prison. Melvin Knight pleaded guilty to first and second-degree murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy to commit murder and kidnapping. He was sentenced to death and has tried on multiple occasions to appeal his sentence.